Okay. All right. Well, I think I'm going to get started. People are starting to join now, so I will, to respect our time, I will get going. So welcome to all of you who are joining us, whether you're viewing this now live or as a recording at a future date. We're really happy to have you with us. My name's Naomi Hoffer, and I'm the program manager for the Sheri Sobrato Brisson Brain Cancer Survivorship Program. And with us also today in the background, and part of the survivorship program, is Alexa Greenstein. She's our nurse practitioner. And so Alexa and I, together with a larger team of practitioners and specialists, are building a comprehensive survivorship program that will support those who have completed brain cancer treatment in a way that helps them live their healthiest lives possible. And we do that through clinical support, educational programs such as this, wellness activities, coaching, and community building. So in line with those goals, this webinar series on living well with brain cancer brings in experts on various topics. And this month, we're featuring Regan Fedric to talk about exercising for enhanced wellness. Because this is a new year and the beginning, although some say ending, of a whole new decade, we know that the #1 resolution or intention that people have when they set is to exercise, to get fit. And I know that's my goal too for this year. So we're really happy today to have Regan talk to us, and our really esteemed and inspiring guest talk to us about incorporating exercise into their lives. And we're going to have patients that are survivors now speak about their life as survivors and incorporating exercise again after treatment and through recovery. So for the next hour, if you go to the slide for the agenda, we're going to hear from exercise physiologist Regan Fedric, and I'm also thrilled to have two lovely and inspiring people with us today, Carrie Blair and Cullen, who can speak from a personal perspective on their experiences incorporating physical activity into their lives during and after brain cancer treatment. Those of you viewing live can submit questions, and there's a Q&A function on your screen that you might see there. And we're going to address those questions at the end around 6:30 when we're ending our formal presentation. And then we're introducing a new segment of this webinar. It's called After the Show, and it's going to allow those of you who are viewing and watching this to kind of come out from behind the curtain, so to speak, and we'll stop recording and you can just say hello and we can meet one another face to face and have more of a dialogue. So before I turn it over to Regan and our other featured guest participants, I want to offer a short introduction for Regan. Regan Fedric is a certified cancer exercise trainer, and she spent most of her adult life as an exercise advocate for those living with cancer. She is founder of Sunflower Wellness, a San Francisco-based nonprofit organization whose mission is to empower people living with cancer find strength and support through exercise. She partnered with UCSF over 10 years ago and brought the nation's first ever cancer exercise counseling program to our patients. We are thrilled to now have her on the neuro-oncology staff to offer exercise counseling to our patients and their loved ones during their radiation treatment visits. I'm so grateful to her and to our other wonderful panelists, Mark and Kari, for being with us here today. Thank you so much. Regan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's joining. This is I've dedicated, I started studying exercise science, exercise physiology in college, and very passionate about it. I was active throughout my life, played basketball in college, Division I. And so I truly believe in the benefits of exercise. I believe in, use it or lose it concept of the body. And I really enjoy the one-on-one consultations or group setting or any event that I get to do to help educate and to try to help motivate people to, to adapt, to change, to progress, just anything to keep people moving. That's really what I do. And with the clinical setting, I try to focus on, especially with the past 19 years, I've focused on cancer and exercise programming and development. And some of that's been on the research track, but now it's more in programming and really working with specialty clinics focused on one-on-one consultations and program development to patients I try to meet everyone where they are, right? So I truly believe that everyone can do something, and that anything's better than nothing. And so we just, and that you start where you start, and hopefully we get a hook, and we get you sort of on a good track, and you actually start enjoying it, and then we'll build and progress from there. But so I look forward to talking through this tonight with you all, and we'll have time, as Naomi said, for questions in the end. I'll turn it over now to you, Carrie, for an introduction.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Blair, and you can't see me because I don't have video capability, but I was working in high tech, and I would get like really sick all the time, and I couldn't understand it. I was traveling, to different customer sites week to week and implementing products, and I knew my body and I knew myself, and I couldn't understand why I was getting ill. And so I went to my primary care physician, and they tested my blood, and everything was fine and no issues, but I just couldn't, and this is, in the time of the boom, and I just didn't know what was wrong. And they said, well, why don't you go ahead and take the stress out of your life? Well, that's hard to do when you're working for somebody who, is not at the time very, how should I say this? Not very, thoughtful about what I was going through. They were just concerned about the bottom line. So I became a yoga enthusiast, and by the time I was, and so I started off as, running half marathons and whatnot, and then became a yoga enthusiast. And by the time everything was said and done, I was falling asleep during my relaxation yoga class. So I knew there was something really wrong with me, and I just kept going from doctor to doctor, and nobody could find what was wrong with me. And I was having terrible headaches, no connection. And so finally, I was working for a company that was closing down, and I was the last man standing in the office, and I just, shut down the office, got rid of all the stuff that they had there, and basically I moved home because I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I actually passed out during a shower and hit my head. So that was when my parents said, okay, we got to take you to the hospital. And so they did a CT scan, and basically I had a mass on my brain. And that was 10 years. And I was diagnosed with an oligodendroglioma, grade 2.
Thank you, Carrie. And then we'll, our plan today is the agenda is, we'll get through introductions and follow up with, I'll go through some guidelines, kind of current updates with cancer and exercise recommendations, and then we'll dive into a few different topics and let Carrie and Mark both speak specifically about how they used exercise and worked with exercise programming or exercise throughout treatment and beyond. Mark, if you'd like to introduce yourself now.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hi, I'm Mark Cullen, and Kari and I haven't met, but we have a very similar story. I'm San Francisco, a father of 2, and about a year and a half ago, I was working in technology, running a small software company, and I started to get very nervous or almost have panic attacks. And I'm not typically someone who has panic attacks, and it was a little bit surprising to me. And I went to some doctors to make sure it was okay, and everyone sort of agreed that while I was in a fairly stressful position in my professional life, probably, and I could control it by breathing and relaxation, that it was probably just minor panic attacks or stress. These continued to present themselves as my company started to do better and better and better. It just didn't seem to correlate with any professional risk like we had thought. I mean, and so we kind of kept at it and went back to some doctors and said, it just doesn't seem right. There's no associated risk with these panic attacks. A long story, it turns out they were almost daily small seizures. And in trying to track down what might be causing them, we really tried all avenues and finally did an MRI, which was a year and a day ago to today, which uncovered a mass that I had, also an oligodendroglioma. And that was obviously the 14th of January last year. Since then, have gone through the standard protocol, had surgery, and through in September and October went through radiology and chemotherapy, and I continue to stay on Timodar, which I'm sure many of you folks would understand. I'm really happy to be able to connect with all of you, and hopefully, as we talk through our discussion, we'll each learn some things from each other. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks again, Kari. So I'll go into a presentation now, and then, like I said, we'll have just kind of different interactions with Kari and Mark throughout to hear about their experience and with exercise. Sorry, we should have had that one up, but here we are. And so I wanted to speak about recently updated exercise oncology guidelines. It's been, like I said, I've been focusing on this for 19 years, and it's finally there's a lot of movement. I think it's, evidence-based research is in our corner. That's one thing. I think also patients are seeking it. And, people are living longer, treatments are getting better. And so people are living longer and beyond. And so all of these things, I think, are contributing to the movement that's, no pun intended, but afoot with cancer and exercise. So the guidelines I'll go into more specifically in a few minutes, but the big thing that happened last year, sort of end of year, October, November of 2019, is that after a multidisciplinary international roundtable conference on cancer and exercise that we actually hosted here in the Bay Area, it's now agreed that exercise should be embedded part of standard care. It's that however it's done, whether it's having exercise physiologists or certified exercise, we call it exercise oncology counselors with special certifications, on site or at least accessible in your community for referrals. Physical therapy is another way that's sort of getting involved with cancer and exercise programming. So many different ways that we think this will grow forward. We do have a pretty good network here in the Bay Area of people working on this. There are little hubs around the country, but the hope is that within the next, I'd like to think that kind of fast track it within the next 5 years, that this will be a little more mainstream and sort of accessible and available to everyone. And end goal with all of this exercise counseling and programming is to, give safe guidance and to make sure that we're, doing no harm, meeting people where they are, helping people navigate, the difference in how, exercise while undergoing chemotherapy or exercising while in radiation treatment, or, prehabilitation is a new thing that's on the rise. So helping people before surgery or connecting with people post-surgery when appropriate and when they've been cleared medically to start exercising. And then, setting up the right program that is, doable and then progressing it when a person is ready. So this is what we, I'm glad to be on staff and on board with neuro-oncology at UCSF now. And, that's always sort of the end goal in the one-on-one consultations with patients, is to really make sure that, I know I'm giving you a safe program, something that you can do, and helping you, meet your goals, whatever they might be, and or not. If you don't have goals, we'll try to figure them out together. But so again, big news, a lot of stuff going on around the country with this, and I do think that you'll continue to hear more and more about it within the next few years. And again, we're all sort of working towards this, making exercise a part of the standard of care with cancer treatment. So this is just kind of a quick summary from I looked at like a lot of the research that's been done in the past 10 to 15 years. And So what are the physiological outcomes? What do we see improved by exercise training in cancer survivors? And I mean, you know, I think a lot of this we all know, but cardiovascular health and fitness, muscular strength, bone health, body composition, range of motion, so just improve with flexibility, range of motion, balance and flexibility. So all of these things decreasing, and in some cancers, there are studies that have proven that it can decrease your chance of recurrence rates. Also, there are studies that are proving that help people live longer beyond a cancer diagnosis and treatment. So again, this was just a quick snapshot summary of what we know from the research that's current, that's been done to date. And then this talks about the psychological attributes improved by exercise training in cancer survivors. So positive effects during and post-treatment. So, you know, helping people as they're going through treatment, and also helping people beyond, increasing, you know, anxiety, decreasing anxiety rather, trying to help with depression, mood and self-esteem, fatigue, just overall quality of life enhancement. And then also just that I'd say the one, you know, testimonial that I hear over and over again is something I could control, right? Like just that taking on an exercise program was something that in the face of all of these unknowns, you know, with not knowing how the next treatment was going to affect you or what the next scan might prove, or, but at least like with exercise, there was something that, you know, I could say, hey, you know, 2 days a week or 3 days a week or whatever it might be, I am going to go and do, you know, I'm going to keep walking, or I might attend my class on Wednesday, or whatever, you know, again, your goal, whatever the program you decide is right for you, just staying course with it. And I think I see this also as a parallel to nutrition, you know, with choices that we make around food and you know, what to eat or not. So these two things, I think, in combination really help, which is empowerment to people as patients as you're going through treatment and beyond. So this was body systems impacted by exercise training. So this slide and the next slide I'll sort of work with together. But so you know, with exercise, we know that there are immediate and long, you know, term effects with the nervous system, musculoskeletal, cardiovascular, respiratory, metabolic, endocrine, immune, renal, cognitive health, and psychological health. So we know that the body, you know, again, just with continued, you know, dedication to exercise, moving the body, you can have benefits with the body and its system in all of these ways. And then kind of this slide goes to speak to how is the body impacted or affected by treatment, right? And so if you look at it, it's basically the same list, you know, so, you know, cancer treatment can affect the nervous system, musculoskeletal, cardiovascular, respiratory, metabolic, endocrine, immune, renal, and psychological health. Nervous system we look at with, you know, the functional changes that can occur, sensations that might occur because of a treatment that you're undergoing or a surgery that you've had, neuropathies, and cognitive health and function. So just again to highlight, like, what does exercise do, you know, for you with again dedication and consistent effort, and then how does a diagnosis and treatment affect the body? So just to show like that exercise can ultimately help minimize and or, you know, negate some of and just to help you manage the overall treatment effects better if sustained throughout and or, you know, after treatment. I will say one thing that, and this is kind of a recent change we've had in the past, actually I'd say, you know, 8 to 10 years, more people are coming and like you're coming in to meet and do consultations immediately upon diagnosis, or even, you know, before surgery, pre-surgery, which is where you get into the prehabilitation conversation, or, you know, that whole sort of field that's starting to develop, and or, you know, really working with us through treatment, right? Working with us, you know, upon diagnosis, throughout chemotherapy treatment, as they go through radiation treatment, sort of checking in along the way. So, and that's something that, again, 8 to 10 years ago wasn't the case. I think a lot of people were waiting and starting, you know, kind of like it was enough to take on the diagnosis and to manage treatment, but and so sort of saving exercise to waiting until, like, you know, post-treatment and then starting an exercise program. But I'm really, you know, I can tell you so many benefits that we see in helping people, again, minimize some of the side effects of chemotherapy, just sort of minimizing the long-term, you know, the effects, immediate effects of radiation therapy and managing. And so one of the benefits of the consultation and sort of working with people throughout is that we really can, tailor a program to your needs, right? And so we can adjust and adapt. I often say to patients that it's like a detour, right? So you're diagnosed, and so, okay, so your program, we might have to change things and sort of go on this, detour, change our route for a little bit, but we can ultimately always get you back to some level of exercise adherence and programming that you want to achieve. And so here, this is just kind of going into a little bit on some of the research. Fortunately, there's not a ton of research that's been done specifically on cancer and exercise, at least not clinical trials with cancer and exercise specific to brain tumors. There are observational studies. There are kind of, reviews on data that's out there, smaller group studies. Some things have been done with following a group class for 6 months or something, or then taking a few case studies and doing comparisons. But overall, we see that the overall effective is that we think it can in exercise specific to brain tumor treatment, that we can help with a combination of cardiovascular and strength training programs, and those are the two things that I want to focus on tonight as we get deeper into this this conversation. That we can help with cognitive function. It can help with ultimately depression, with overall fatigue. I mean, these are the things that the studies talk about. And some of them, if you look at the second bullet, the study that was done in 2011 with Duke and a pretty big cohort of participants, they 5 days a week, 30 minutes of just walking, and that has proven to significantly prolong survivorship. So, and then the final is again just October of 2019. American College of Sports Medicine and the American Cancer Society, along with an international group of medical professionals and academics and exercise specialists and researchers, came together to say all cancer survivors should avoid inactivity. That we really do believe that there is something for everyone, that we can work with people along the scope. And so that was, again, big news, and ultimately helping us step towards the closer to standard of care with cancer and exercise programming. And then in the past 5 years, so this is just more specific to other studies that have been done on brain health and exercise. And I just sort of looked at some of the more recent stuff coming down the line, but there's a ton of information out, looking at overall brain health and exercise, which is different than, brain tumor and cancer treatments or treatments with brain tumors. But still, I'd like to think that there's some correlation here. So several recent systemic reviews investigated the relationship of cognition, and they've made the following conclusions. And again, I looked at, just reviewed, 20 or 30 studies and made a summary of bullets here. But cardiovascular and resistance exercise seemed to be, again, that was the most common, combination, and can help with overall problem solving. So it can, with cognitive executive function, with cognition, in memory, and then cardiovascular and exercise sufficient intensity should be about 60 to 75%. That's what most of the studies looked at, and that can significantly elevate brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So resistance exercise stimulates the production of the globulin factor. I need to slow down, I think. And then resistance exercise, and I'll talk more about this later, but we also looked at how it affects neural pathways, proprioception in the body, how it can help with balance, and which we get into, with decreasing fall prevention and decreasing injuries and that sort of thing. So we'll speak more to that a little bit later. But again, the best data comes from looking at a combination of cardiovascular and strength training and the different the different recruitments that it does throughout the body for neuromuscular as well as overall function. And then there was like the last thing that kind of came up. There are a lot of things out about, mental, like brain games and challenges and things that you can do. And, some of those are physical. Some of them are, like Sudoku puzzles or, doing things, games that are on technology, like on a phone app or looking at computers. So some of the studies incorporated those things in too, and ultimately that sort of seemed to prove like some of the biggest benefits. So, I think the end point here is a combination of, and just to sort of continue to throw different challenges at your body, mix it up, try new things, have a combination of different ways to stimulate the mind, reading, doing different things with drawing, whatever you could find that you enjoy. That's another piece of it, right? So that it doesn't seem like it's just one more thing to add to your to-do list. So if you like to draw, that's great, carve out time and add that. But adding that to physical body activity as well seemed to be sort of like, from at least all of the research I could see on what can we do for cognitive health, brain function, how do we best support this? And then, so I think that's just sort of the summary I wanted to make with the overall studies that are out there on brain health and exercise. And then with there are actually a lot of studies that are underway now, specifically studies on cancer or on exercise and neuro-oncology projects that are underway, sort of in phase, they're kind of in the early stages, but they're larger cohorts of participants. So the expectation is that we'll see good results there, but to be determined. So I wanted to go into cardiovascular recommendations first. I'll speak to these, and then my plan here is to talk about this and then to sort of turn it over to Kari and then follow that with Mark to have them speak about, their experience or what they did with cardiovascular exercise while undergoing treatment. So again, first thing is, avoid inactivity. Again, that's just a general guideline with cancer and exercise, is to avoid inactivity. The recommendation, it sort of follows the general exercise recommendations, 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate, intense exercise. I have to say to people, if you think about that, divide the week into 7 days, it's 20, a little more than 22 minutes, 22 to 23 minutes a day of just elevating your heart rate some and moving your body for cardiovascular benefits. And of course, you could take that and strip it down in different ways. You could do 5 days for 30 minutes and have a couple of days, for rest. So it's not ultimately as intimidating as it needs to be. And if you do a vigorous, aerobic activity, the time window on that decreases some to 75, 100 minutes per week. Although there has been recently, there's a few studies that have come out, and they speak to just anything, again, small bouts count too. So, if just moving 10 to 15 minutes a day makes a difference. So I think, because sometimes I think when I talk with people, there are, barriers, whether it's just life and time or, just the commitment of staying with exercise. So I think ultimately we want to do, and one of the hopes at the end of tonight is to break down those barriers to help make exercise seem less intimidating and really, again, just if you're not doing anything, we'll find something. We can talk about things to help you start doing something, that again, anything's better than nothing. So I do really believe that there's a way to get everyone to move. And, we can talk about sort of in the end, in the wrap up, we'll talk about the different ways that you can consider, taking on a new activity or adding something new to your routine, or starting a routine if you're not currently doing something. So I always recommend to at least 2 different activities in the weekly routine. Mix it. I think it's, less wear and tear on the body, recruits more neural pathways, and ultimately can help with motivation as well, right? So it's not like the same old. Mixing it up, so that kind of plays in the same, but I speak to that a little bit, just so those two sort of fall in line. But if you can, sometimes if you don't have access to it, that's fine too. But I think if you can have sort of a mix of a couple of things or a few things that you do throughout the course of the week, and it doesn't even have to be weekly. It could be that I'm going to focus on I divide the year into quarters, and I know someone who sort of hikes in the spring, and then in the winter they go to an indoor pool, and so again, there are lots of different ways to play around with that. But ultimately, however you get it done, the goal would be 150 minutes at least minimum per week, and or if you're doing more vigorous exercise, 75 to 100 minutes per week, and then to add variation to your routine. So that's again, speaking to this, anything's better than nothing, just showing lots of different ways, whether it's, if you have access to a facility, getting on any piece of equipment is great. Swimming, dancing, walking, hiking, walking your dog. Again, it's ultimately in the end, it's just always about trying to find, expose yourself to new things, try new things. If you like it, great. If you don't, at least you tried it. what does it take to, what's your hook? Like what is it that will help motivate you and keep you, to keep you going? So I think at this point, Carrie, I'll turn it over to you to talk specifically about cardiovascular activity that you did during treatment. And Carrie, if you'll speak for a few minutes, and then Mark will let you speak as well.
So thank you, Regan. And, I wanted to find something. I'm kind of a control freak, so I needed to find something that I enjoyed and I could do reasonably well. So I just, after my morning nap, I would go up to UCSF and have the first radiation session of the day, and I would come home. And I live in San Jose, so it was about an hour to an hour and a half drive each way. I would nap for, a good couple of hours and then get up, eat something, and then go for an afternoon walk. And I would do that for half hour, 2 to 3 times a week. But I found that it gave me energy and I was able to control my balance, in addition to, getting the good cardiovascular workout.
Thank you. Thanks, Carrie. Mark, do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, happy to. I've been a long time exercise enthusiast and athlete, and so I really, kind of moved from the outset to try to incorporate that part of my life into my treatments. And so, sort of post-operation is when I began this, and I started very small because I found a couple of things I want to kind of mention why I did all this, besides the fact that I'm a long-term proponent of exercise and it was part of how I define myself. I found that exercising provided me with the sense of agency and control at a time of my life when I felt uncertain and helpless. And that was really important for me. It was something I could do that I knew was generally helpful to my health. And I took positive satisfaction from that. It also let me set and achieve small goals. I didn't go out to go crazy the first day after my surgery or, during the radiation period. I set small goals. I set, I started the day after I had my operation. I went for a walk on the beach with my dad, and that kind of kicked it off. And after that, I set little goals. Like I set a goal to try to get to 10,000 steps, something that I, with my watch would kind of take as a baseline for many days, but became a challenge. And it was a relatively easy challenge. It was walking, but it forced me into that, period of walking for 10 or 20 or 30 minutes a day. And when I did hit the 10,000, when my watch sort of buzzed in the middle of a walk with some friends, it was really exciting. I mean, it was a very positive reinforcement for me. But the corollary to that, I think, as I mentioned in both of those, was with other people. It allowed me to be social and to do something with other people. And I found, them to be very, very supportive. And I had some walks with some other sort of brain cancer survivors, which was really helpful to help guide me and a way to connect and reconnect with some friends. And it helped me immeasurably like that. And then, so sort of with walking and then some sort of light jogging, and that again helped with the balance. And then I started to set bigger and bigger goals because I kind of got addicted to this idea of, oh, there's like little things I can do. And what I found was, and this is really interesting to me, was it's very counterintuitive, but exercising gives you energy. And I began to realize, like during my radiation sessions, that in that time during the day when I get really, really fatigued, if I exercised, after about, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of exercise, my body kind of turned back on. It's like I almost turned the big engines back on. The circulatory system, I could feel, kind of came back up, and the muscle memory started to come back in. And I just started to feel better really quickly. I kind of felt like my old self, and that was persistent. So, it was almost a leap of faith for me. But then I started to realize, like, when you feel tired, counterintuitively go exercise. And then for the rest of the day, I felt really, really good, very much like my old self. And I still feel that's the case for me. And I feel like your body kind of remembers what it's like to exercise, whether it's walking or running or swimming or whatever I was doing. It kind of was a familiar feeling to it, and it allowed those systems to kind of kick in. and lastly, kind of psychologically, before Regan had mentioned this, I didn't understand the research behind it, but I kind of, before my operation, before my radiation, and even now, I wanted to get in shape a little bit. I wanted to, my idea was that my body is this sort of very sophisticated engine at fighting illness, and I wanted to give it every advantage it had to do that, and not, so I wanted to kind of get in a little bit of shape so that, kind of it was there and ready to go. And again, that's more like a psychological bump, but it really helped. So that went from, I went from sort of 10,000 steps to, doing more jogging. And then eventually I started setting these really interesting goals. So, I kept in touch with my medical team, who kind of said, gave me guidelines on what to do and not to do. But I started swimming more, and I just decided that, on a reach, that as I finished up my radiation therapy, I was going to set a goal to do something that I'd never done before. And so I decided that I was going to swim from Alcatraz to San Francisco, without a wetsuit, as crazy as that sounds. And I got a bunch of friends to do it with me, and I got a bunch of friends to, kind of pilot it with boats, and I do swim in the bay. So, it wasn't reckless by any means, but it was really exciting. And so much so that it's my screensaver. I look back on it with a sense of accomplishment, and I'm really still excited about what that helped me do. So that's, my personal experience, but small goals, still provides me with a sense of control. It allowed me to reconnect with people who I found there was a whole bunch of people who were remarkably excited about getting out there and walking with me, because they, it was obviously symbiotic. They were helping me, and I was being helped. I was helping them in some ways. So that was really exciting. So that's where I am now. Of course, I've got to, kind of figure out what my next achievable goal is. I don't know what that is yet, but it's kind of fun to think about. So That's my experience.
Good. Thank you so much, both of you. That's great, and you'll figure out your next goal, no doubt. I think you'll see in a bit. I speak to that, just the importance of kind of continuing to, try new things, mix it up, reinvent yourself. So you will. So I'm going to speak now to strength training and just the general recommendations. Again, guidelines, avoid inactivity. It's recommended at least 2 times a week. This is, again, I'm pulling, this is from recommendations, but also from looking at a lot of studies that are out specific to cancer exercise. 2 to 3 times a week. But I really counsel and coach people on twice weekly, and then 10 to 12 repetitions. You see some studies that kind of worked more in the 12 to 15 range, but I typically work around the recommend 10 to 12 repetitions in 2 sets. You want to target all of the major muscle groups, really focusing on, upper body, lower body, just core. Core is, it's, center body, right? So I would say if you think of the spine as sort of the core of an apple, it's the same in our body. It's abdominal muscles, back muscles, center part. It's kind of the connector of our lower body and upper body, but crucial to overall function and long-term ability to, to keep moving. And then multiplanar movements, and I will speak more to this, just dynamic functional training. This has become more and more of a thing, but I'm a big believer in it. And, if you just think about it, and then the other piece, I believe in it anyway. I think it's, use the body, move it like you use it, like you need to use it, right? And if you think about what we do, just day to day, just in general with living, just think, you go grocery shopping and you're picking things up from shelves and putting them in bags, or unloading your car, and then you're putting things away in your home. And so, if you think about just any day-to-day movement that you do on a regular basis, it is using the body as a unit, right? It's a kinetic chain. And so it works as a unit, opposed to sort of isolating and breaking down. So I'm a big believer in teaching people to use the body as a whole unit, opposed to, isolating different groups, at least in some part of your training program, and then mixing it up. And what I mean by that with strength training is, if it's, there are different ways to do it. So, yoga is a form of strength training, Pilates, whatever, all movement, ultimately it's like muscles in motion. But, maybe I use dumbbells at home, or if you're doing that, I would say, great, well, let's also add some body weight exercises into your program. Or, if you have access to a gym facility, sometimes use the cable tower, and then some days use the dumbbells, and then occasionally get on the, stationary equipment, and, or depending on, what's going on with the body and any limitations you may or may not have. I mean, stationary equipment can be great. So and that's, again, it's wear and tear, it's recruiting more neural pathways. There are lots of benefits to it. It can also help with overall motivation and just adherence of programs. So this is just, I wanted to put this slide in to show, major muscle groups throughout the body. Again, 2 to 3 times weekly recommended with strength training, 2 sets, in general. There's pretty good evidence on the fact that, 2 sets is just in terms of building, so building muscle, but also maintaining muscle mass. 2 sets is good enough. I mean, if the extremes are people that get into like the body, extreme bodybuilders and that sort of thing, which is a totally different category and subject, but really 2 sets is what we need to maintain and sustain. And again, the 8 to 12 repetitions or, 8 to 15 repetitions is typically what I, give guidance on with programming and program design. And then this gets into what I was talking about, the multiplanar movements, the more functional dynamic training. So the body has the ability to move, 3-dimensionally, but we often don't do that. I mean, you think about kind of what we do in general with life, right? It's sort of, if you're working a lot on computers and like the tech world and that sort of thing, I mean, there's, you're sitting a lot, although now more and more we're seeing the sit and stand desk. And so that's a great option and a great way to work with, outside of just, being sedentary and sitting. So kind of the option to be up and down, but, driving cars, the things we do at home, cooking. So many of these things sort of keep us in a less, keep us isolated to a certain position. And we're only using certain parts of the body, but we can, with an exercise program, you can get into things that, if you look at these 3 planes, right, the body's divided into upper body, lower body, it's divided from front and back. And then we have the sagittal plane, which sort of cuts it in the middle, like straight down the middle, which is the right and left side of the body. So always think about exercise programming. You want to make sure that your program incorporates movement in all planes of motion. This will improve range of motion. It helps prevent injuries. It creates more stability in the joints. It's with again, it's been proven over and over again. This type of exercise, especially with resistance training, is good for brain health. It recruits more neural pathways, helps with cognitive function, and then just overall proprioception and reactiveness, that we need throughout life just to manage. You think about an exercise, so if there are like rotational exercises and, you can do things like combination exercises. I always tell people, let's think about what can we do that incorporates your lower body and your upper body. So, if you take, for example, just like even now I'm sitting in a chair, but if I had weights or even if I didn't have weights, I could stand up and at the same time push my arms up. And so now I've got an upper body and lower body thing happening. There's another example I like to use that's a squat row. So if I were in a gym and I had, a cable tower in front of me, I could be standing up and holding it. And as I squat, and then when I stand up, I row and pull in. So there are multiple, so my upper body and lower body are working together. That also engages, I think of the core, what we call like the core body as the bridge, it's connecting the lower body and the upper body. But if you think about what's happening in the brain when those big exercises, those big patterns are happening, it's a lot to manage. So that's where we get into the neural pathway recruitment and the overall improvement with just function and the ability to, be better coordinated and more agile, and then stability as well. So that is, if you're not currently doing that, highly recommend that you look into adding more dynamic functional movement patterns to your program. There's a lot of good information out, resources online. And if you guys are in the Bay Area and you have the opportunity to come in and do a consultation, we can talk about that and we can help move it. But ultimately you look at, making sure that you're, doing things in front of, front part of the body. So push exercises, but also pull exercises. You want to move laterally. So make sure you're doing things that recruit the right side and the left side of the body, and then rotational, right? So doing things to rotate. That's really kind of a simple way to break it all down. And then I wanted to ask both of you, Kari and Mark, if you talk to me about and to us about strength training, what did you do during treatment to maintain and or gain muscle mass?
So for me, over the course of my Temidor treatment, I did Pilates, and it made me feel good. It made me feel like I was actively, and I had never done Pilates before, so it was new for me, and I really liked it. And it got me through some pretty tough times emotionally with treatment. And so, I felt like, it was a good decision, and I was able to, set many goals in the Pilates world. And, because in the beginning I couldn't do a lot of the stuff that they were asking me to do. But I eventually was able to do it, and that was fun for me.
Great.
So
Yeah, thank you. What I love about that is that you found, you found a hook, right? You found something that you enjoyed and you stayed with it. And and I mean, you have your story to tell, and you continued to stay with it, and you're still doing it. So I think that's great, and that's a key component to success and adherence of exercise programming.
Yeah.
And Mark, what about you?
So I have always been a rower, cruise shells, and so
Yes.
I did very light weight training. I didn't do weight training to build muscle mass. I did it more to avoid injury and sort of just stay in shape, because I'm also aging while I'm battling cancer. And but for me, rowing is both an aerobic and an anaerobic sport, and it will build muscle mass. So it was a nice way for me to do to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. So I would go and do 30 to 60 minutes of varying intensity rowing on the rowing machine, and that helped keep at least my big muscle groups engaged and kept me from too much atrophy.
Yeah, that's great. And you were you doing this at home? Is your row machine at home?
So I'm lucky or unlucky enough to have a rowing machine at my house, depending on whether you like that machine or not. And so I did a lot of it at home, but I also would go down to a club that I belong in and do it because, again, I found the exercise was a nice way for me to get out of the house and to go and be with other people, even if it was sort of anonymously at a gym, and sort of socialize. Yeah, if it was just by sitting on a rowing machine and rowing.
Yeah, I get that. I hear that often. That when as long as there's nothing that's restricting you, sometimes that sense of normalcy, or just if you're the going into a health club, just that feeling sense of normalcy and just connecting with others and being with others who are moving and kind of can bring up your motivational levels, or in some ways can help.
And I was always proud of it. I was proud of 10,000 steps. I was like, hey, I'm going through this crazy, terrible thing, and I walked 10,000 steps. Hey, I'm going through this crazy, terrible thing, and I made it to the club. It's like, yay for me.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so then I wanted to go into, to get both of you to speak a little bit. We've talked some about what you did during treatment, but talk to us about, what do you do after, or what are you continuing to what are you doing now? Bring it forward, bring it current.
Well, for me, I was able to set a goal of becoming Pilates mat certified so I could teach mat classes. I don't teach, just as an FYI, but because I need full medical benefits, and Pilates studios don't give, at least not in the area I live in, they don't give benefits. So I, did do a Pilates training seminar, which required me to go to training sessions. So I'm interacting with other people who have like-minded, goals. And then, I had to do teaching and observation hours. But I became certified in October 2017 and continue to use that in my daily activity. So I have stuff at home that I can do. I have a friend who lets me use her studio, and it's great. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, again, great. I mean, so many things, you could think about just that, again, like you found something that you liked, you wanted to learn more, you took it to the next level, and you actually got certified, and you continued to incorporate it into your programming, right? I mean, it's such a toolbox that you can pull from because of all of the continued training and education that you got behind it.
Exactly.
So, you set a goal for yourself and you achieved it, and that's.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, that's outstanding, right? With just just the dedication and the discipline that kind of goes behind that. So, congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Mark, I'll pull up your images next, and talk to us about. I mean, I know you started setting some of these goals and working towards them, but what are you doing, now, and how do you continue? What's next?
Let me walk through a slide. There's my very first 10,000 step day. I was so proud I took a picture of it.
Nice. Yeah.
Below that is me and an old friend of mine who flew out from the East Coast to help me recover, and we went on a hike on one of my favorite runs, which is the Dipsea Trail. And
the Dipsea.
Yeah, so I'm a long-term Dipsea and double Dipsea runner. And this was more of a walk hike at best, but it was a great way for me to connect with an old dear friend, and that was great. There's the infamous image of me swimming my last week of radiation therapy from Alcatraz that I'm super proud of. And then the last is another swim across America, cancer fundraiser that I swam for, and it's a fundraiser that helps benefit other cancer survivors, which I'm really gave me exciting, kind of was excited to get to do that. So my ongoing training is sort of scheduled around, is oriented around three different things. One is the Head of the Charles, which is a rowing race every fall in Boston that I'm going to do everything I can to compete in with my old friends from college. The second is to do more of these events like Swim Across America, where I can use sort of exercise in two ways to, as a motivation for me to get ready for something, and then to feel like I'm giving back to other people in the cancer community. And that makes me feel like I'm a productive part of the future generations of people who may have to go through this. And the last is the thing I didn't want to say earlier, but I'll tell you, is I have this crazy idea that somehow within the next year I can run a marathon. And I am not a marathon runner. So that's my stretch goal. I don't know if I'm going to do it yet, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm starting to get excited about it. But I'm going for, I'm going for I'm not running anywhere near those distances right now, but I've got no time frame, just a goal.
Yeah. Have you done a half marathon? Okay.
I've run marathons before. That's the good news. I'm not a marathon runner. I'm a little bit heavy on that side for doing that, but I haven't picked a marathon yet. At first I thought, I'll do Boston. Well, I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen for Boston, but that's okay. There are summer marathons and fall marathons, and I just love the idea of kind of picking a goal like that and getting to it. So it's not that everybody has to do that. That's my stretch goal, but I'm enjoying the journey as much as the accomplishment when I finally do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned to see which marathon you decide to run, because I have no doubt you will do it.
Thank you. I can't wait to figure that out myself.
All right. So I'm just going to take a few minutes. We have about 5 minutes left before we open for questions. So, how to start, just to kind of close this all out, but if you're new to exercise and, and diagnosed and going through treatment, and or if you're really deconditioned, I definitely recommend medical clearance, or at least kind of checking with medical professionals before embarking on any pathway of exercise. Schedule an exercise consultation with a certified exercise oncology trainer, or make sure that you're consulting with someone who has knowledge of cancer and a diagnosis to help you really kind of make the best plan. Again, safety. You want to make sure that you're not going to do anything to set yourself back. We do no harm. Physical therapy if needed. You can talk to your medical team to get advice on that, or sometimes even in a consultation. We in that conversation that I have with patients, sometimes I will refer patients into physical therapy, and that I can't refer, but I can at least suggest that they get a referral in. And so we exercise consultation is different. We're focusing on the whole body and exercise programming and movement. Physical therapy, it's really about addressing a problem that could be limiting, or that really needs to be, resolved, or at least addressed before you embark on a bigger program. So luckily here in the Bay Area, we have good relationships with physical therapy. And again, we recommend and help get patients too if we think needed, and we also are referred, as patients are coming out of physical therapy. Also, there's a pickup where we can help there, therefore, kind of get you to continue a program safely. Appropriate clothing and footwear, right? So just take care of your body. If it's, make sure you've got layers, and or if it's raining, rain gear, that sort of thing. Good footwear is important, just to take care of your feet. It's the, base of our foundation, right? It's crucial for movement. So, do all that you can to set yourself up for success with both clothing and footwear. Hydration, I definitely recommend staying hydrated in general, but before, during, and after exercise is key. Eat food before and after a bout of exercise. You want to, food is fuel. So, so everyone's different. I mean, some people can eat, and 5 minutes later exercise. I typically, think that, half an hour, sort of, get some food in you, and then make sure you've got some digestive time, exercise, and then restore yourself afterwards with food. But start slowly and listen to your body. And again, just, safety first, set yourself up for success. So make sure that, like I say, if you want to become a runner and you haven't been a runner, not necessarily going to go out and start running, a mile or more right away. You want to probably start that program with walk, jog, right? And then walk, jog, it becomes more of a jog, walk. So you're jogging more than you're walking. And then, eventually that becomes sort of a doable run. So just think about sort of the steps that you take to putting into, make sure that you sort of progress appropriately, and then know when to stop, right? So if it just, you just any given day, and maybe you start out with a plan. I go into the gym to do this exercise program, or I'm, I think I'm going to do 45 minutes today, but 30 minutes into it, maybe that's just something you got to listen to the body, and it could be that, just make sure that when, enough is enough, and don't push beyond any point of discomfort, really. And there are a few, we could go into this more, but just we know when to avoid exercise. So immediately following surgery, you want to make sure that you give the appropriate time for healing, and then even upon starting your exercise program again, making sure that you're not doing anything to create any problems. If you're severely anemic, if there are any worsening changes in physical conditions, lymphedema, I've been following a seizure, sort of giving a 24-hour, just kind of rest recovery period without doing intense exercise programming is recommended. If there's an active infection, and then taking into consideration any other, things that, blood pressure, irregulations, or heart disease. These things all have to kind of come into play with exercise programming and levels of intensity with exercise. And then kind of the follow, just overall programming, just recommendations, goal setting, overall function is outcome. Again, start where you are. You want to start low, progress slowly, and then let symptoms and listen to the body. So let your symptoms guide your progression, right? When you feel let's say you start walking and it's a 10-minute walk program. And then, 10 minutes is just, it's initially maybe that was challenging and your legs were fatigued or you were short of breath, but with dedication, with consistency, we should see improvement on that. And so 10 minutes can become 15 minutes, and 15 minutes can become 20 minutes. And ideally, even, your pace will increase, right? And so just over time, the body, that's one of the great things about the body, is it does respond, and it will respond to exercise, right? So our heart gets stronger, our lungs can manage more, and our muscles, even with again, with discipline, dedication, regular, movement, they do build, they get stronger, and they can continue to manage more. So just, to pay attention and to help with just overall progression. That's always a goal with exercise, just to sort of slowly sort of turn it up a bit, and use what you have. If you're doing exercise at home, or if you don't want to leave your home, or you can find ways to move. I always say to people, you have your physical body, your body, and you have a little bit of space, and we can get you to move, right? So take the stairs when you can, park farther away, and force yourself to walk more. Get those steps in, the 10,000 step goal, or whatever it might be. And again, do what you can. Anything's better than nothing, and listen to your body. I say that over and over again. And I mean that in a lot of ways. One, how do I feel, going into this exercise session today? as I start it, how do I feel while I'm doing it? You know, what is my body telling me? Like, you know, am I forcing this? Is it, you know, and then really another really important factor is how do you recover? You know, the average recovery window, 24 to 48 hours. I often say to people, you know, when you're in chemotherapy treatment, sometimes that window is extended to 48 to 72 just because of systemic toxicity. But, you know, so listen to the body, you know, just, and that can also be a guide for you to sort of know if you're doing the right thing, if you could sort of turn it up a bit, you know, just when to progress or not. And plan and prioritize is key too with weekly exercise and with overall adherence. So, you know, as you plan, social engagements with friends and family, right? I'm meeting so-and-so for coffee or lunch, or as you're making, you know, your schedule for work or medical appointments. Same thing, you know, if we could get exercise to be valued on that same level, that is key to helping with overall success and adherence. So if you think about, like, if I sit down, I typically try to sit down and look at a week, and, you know, I think when this week, when am I going to fit in, you know, my gym visits, or when am I going to run? Where do I weave this into my weekly plan? And it for me, it changes week to week. I mean, there's some people I think that can be a bit more structured and scheduled with exercise, but I tend to just sort of look at a week and look at when I'm going to fit it in, and it is a priority to me. So therefore, you know, I make it happen, and every week it's scheduled on my calendar. But I think that's another key component to overall success and adherence. So I put down here just like a few, you know, resources you can, in terms of goal setting and adherence, sometimes, you know, tracking, things that you can use to help. So Excel spreadsheet, or just, you know, special journal logging, or, you know, taking a piece of paper, writing it in your calendar, however you want to do it. A pedometer is still a great tool. And you can get that in many different, you know, price points with pedometers. Fitbits, smartphones now. I mean, most of our smartphones have GPS, and they can track the amount of movement you do in a day. There's a newer product on the market, the Motive Ring. So all of these things ultimately help just kind of look at, they're a way for you to sort of keep track of and set goals, and then, you know, check yourself to see if you're in line with what you, and then I also wanted to just throw out a few, you know, websites, just apps. And again, there are so many. I mean, even just the other day, I was looking for a new one just I was trying to help someone with a yoga app. And so we just sort of went into the app store on the iPhone, and you're just like, wow, you know, there's so many that continue to come out. So I'm not saying, I mean, most of these I've had some experience with, but I just, you know, again, the options are sort of endless. They're out there. You know, there are websites you can go to, and you can, some of them are free, some of them are fee-based, but ultimately you can sort of find anything you want in terms of looking at, you know, tracking or, you know, even on some of these, you know, apps, the daily yoga app, for example, you can program, and, you know, 10 minutes. I want to do a 10-minute yoga session, and I want it to be relaxing or strenuous. And so, you know, you put all these things in, and then it basically, like, you know, here's your 10-minute yoga program. And it's either, you know, like a person actually doing videos or photographs to help kind of to guide you through it. So, and you can even just, you know, YouTube, you can Google and YouTube find things. So, in terms of, you know, excuses of like not knowing what to do or how to do, I always say to people, there's so many ways to figure it out. And you know, but one of the key things is just, again, always making sure that you've got good guidance, and you know your levels, and listen to your body, and make sure that you're staying course with like what's right, and, you know, for you, so that you don't hurt yourself. And then resources we put in, so the exercise oncology consultation, I do that at UCSF with neuro-oncology team on Thursdays at Parnassus campus. My colleague Jane Clark is at UC as well, sort of throughout the week. But if you're interested and you'd like to sit down and do a one-on-one, you know, conversation about you, and specifically what's going on with you and your goals, and, you know, how to set goals and where I should start, please do take advantage of it and come in to see me and to talk to me. There are lots of classes around the Bay Area. I put out a few things here just in this page, but the Helen Diller Cancer Center, Comprehensive Cancer Center, has a lot of classes. That's a link that shows you the classes throughout the week. Osher Center for Integrative Medicine. Sunflower Wellness, that's a nonprofit that I'm actually co-founder of, and we are connected to health clubs, gyms in the Bay Area. We're pretty strong in Marin, San Francisco, starting to grow a bit more in the East Bay and also in the South Bay. So we are connected to, like, for example, the JCCSF. There's, Harbor Point and Marin. Bay Club is a partner of ours, and you can get discounted memberships and have access to programs. And we've also worked to train the trainers and group exercise instructors so they have knowledge around, cancer and terminology around cancer, treatment side effects, and how to, create programs or work with people coming in that we're referring in. So there are a few classes, aqua classes, strength and balance classes. Core and More is one that Jane teaches at the Osher Center. So if you can certainly go to the website to learn more, or in the consultation, we are all equipped to talk to you about what is available in your community. YMCA has a program, Living Strong, Living Well. It's a 10-week program, and it's structured. I think you go twice a week, small group training, and it's basically built around strength training, resistance training, maintaining muscle mass. And I think I think now at this point we'll open it to questions. If anyone has any questions, we'll take them. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you guys so much. Back again. Here the whole time. Really great to hear what you've had to say, and I feel more inspired. Sorry for a bit of it. Anyway, so I also just mentioned that for those of you that are kind of working towards goals and kind of interested in doing something fun with the community, we're actually gearing up. UCSF is gearing up for a partnership with an organization called Head for the Cure on April 4th. We're going to be doing a 5K walk run at Crissy Field in San Francisco. It's a fundraiser, but it's also going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be all of us in neuro-oncology there, as well as kind of a group community of survivors, patients, and friends and family. So anyway, if you're interested in doing something and working out towards something and an activity in a fun way, please consider that. So I'm now going to open it up to questions. And again, if you want to ask a question, just type it in the Q&A. It's at the bottom of your screen, I think, if you have a laptop. And I have a question here, which is an interesting question. If I were to work out with a trainer, professional coach, or even an exercise buddy, do you have any advice or suggestions on specific qualifications or programs I should be looking for? So working with a trainer or an exercise buddy, anybody have some thoughts about that? Regan, maybe I'll start with you, and then you can open it up to Mark and Kari if they have thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different, certifications now in the training world that we just look at, time. You could certainly look into where has a person been certified. I mean, and you could always go to there are cancer exercise trainer certifications. There are actually two major bodies doing that. ACSM is one, and they have the cancer exercise trainer, and then there's another group. It's actually the CES, Cancer Exercise Specialist. So those certifications have been, in place for, more than 10 years now. And there are throughout the country, thousands of trainers that have those certifications. So you could look for that, but you could also just look at other bodies that have certified, just where did this trainer, what's the educational background profile, but you could look at time and industry, specialty. So that's one of the things that's happened in the health fitness world, which is, the specialties, right? So there are people who focused on healthy aging, and there are people who focus more on, just prevention, and there are people who are focusing on just cancer, diabetes, heart disease, right? So you could look at it with backgrounds on that level. But I think also just in the interview that you have, sort of your initial consultation, where you're getting a chance to say, hey, this is who I am, this is what's going on, these are my goals, and just to see sort of how the person responds, and right, is it just a cookie cutter and then throwing you into something, and or do they really hear you, and are they listening to you and taking all things into consideration with your program design? Again, so that it's not forced upon you to go and do this exactly, so I think that's how I'd answer it. It's just it's one thing to kind of look at on paper credentials or, resume, but the other piece of it is really what's my connection to this person, and just to make sure that, as you embark on the journey with, again, the trainer or an exercise buddy, that, you feel like your needs are being heard and met in the program. You guys have anything to add to that, Carrie or Mark?
No, I think it's great advice. Of course, I ran everything by my care team before I embarked on any idea, and I used them as a permissive sounding board. And then, yeah, by doing something with other people, I felt like that added to the safety aspects. But, as I kind of move into maintenance for myself, I will definitely seek out a certified trainer to try to help me understand how to manage this on a long-term basis.
Yeah.
And I also agree. I think I had an experience with a large national firm that does fitness, and they matched me to a trainer, and they said, oh, she's new grad, she'll be able to take care of you, no problems. And she ended up injuring me. So that was hard for me. But I learned a lot, and I had that like inkling, like, hey, she's not hearing me and doesn't hear me, and I need to take care of myself. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's a great point. So the other piece is just, to know, when something's not right, and think, like, you are 50% of this equation of whatever, like a trainer you're working with or the exercise buddy. And so just to know that, like, if this isn't working for you, then it's okay to stop it and reroute and to change plans, right? So that's a great point that you bring up. Exactly. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I should say, the expert I listen to most is my body.
Yeah.
If I don't feel right, or I'm feeling tight or stiff or sore, I stop.
Yep, that's great, right? I mean, I said that over and over again, listen to your body. And again, it's, how do I feel going into this? How do I feel as I'm doing it? And how do I feel as I recover, right? I mean, all of those things are important.
Thank you so much. We might have time for one more question. And here's a question that's interesting. This is probably to Carrie and Mark, did you feel the same in your body after treatment, or did you have to adjust to a new normal?
I will say I had to adjust to a new normal, and every day is an adjustment for me. I was diagnosed in 2009, so I'm several years out, but I've also had 3 surgeries, and, it's here, I'm here, but I am not my old self at all. Like I said, I used to be a half marathon runner. I used to be very, very physically active. I was a spinner, spin class. I did yoga. I did it all. And I couldn't do anything after I was diagnosed because I was falling asleep. I would get so relaxed. So, but every day's a new day.
Thanks.
And for me, yes, I'm absolutely different than I was before, but I'm also getting older. I mean, it's probably a healthy approach to exercise for anybody, let alone a survivor. And so I'm more careful and more measured in my, my goals and training. And I think that's just it's like eating after my diagnosis. I'm eating better and more healthy, but again, probably really good advice for everybody. So just try to, listen to the body of knowledge on how to live healthily and do that.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Regan, do you mind advancing this to the next slide?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
I want to thank all 3 of you so much for your time and sharing your stories and your expertise with all of us. It's so helpful. I found it really inspiring and just motivating for myself, and I know that it is for all of you watching as well. There is, for those of you that are joining live, there's going to be a brief survey which will be sent to you as soon as you exit this webinar, and we'd love your feedback. We'd love to hear how we can improve and do more topics that are of interest to you. We are going to now open it up I'm going to stop the recording and we'll open it up to just talking casually amongst ourselves and checking in, and it's not going to be recorded. But I do want you to know before you leave that the next webinar we're planning on February 19th. We're going to try to do it the third Wednesdays of each month at 5:30, and hopefully that's a time that works for you to join live. And just please spread the word. We're really delighted to be doing this with you. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you again. I'm going to stop the recording. And bye to all of you who are joining live.